Fanalysis combines the analytics used in fantasy football with the latest metrics of the betting trends to find the top plays each week. And we are joined by the lead betting analyst from Pickswise, Jared Smith. Jared, final week of the regular season, and we start things off with the Raiders, who are 3-point road dogs to the Chargers. Now, the loser of this game is likely eliminated from the playoffs. The Chargers have explosive players. Vegas has an ability to grind it out. So does that mix kind of muddy the waters at all for this pick?
It does, and no surprise, the public, early in the week at least, is backing the glitz and the glamour of LA. They throw the ball down the field with Justin Herbert. He's got the best passing success rate in the NFL this season. But if you were going to ask me playoff football, who would I rather have on my side? Would I rather have the better defense? The weighted DVOA numbers favor Vegas here. They're great against the run. That's going to make the Chargers one-dimensional. Now, the Raiders are having some issues defending the pass, and that's where this handicap gets a little muddy, as you said, because there is a weakness versus strength on the Raiders' defensive side of the ball against that Chargers passing offense. But let's go to the Raiders' offense for a second. Their rushing offense, which has been great. Josh Jacobs averaging almost 20 carries over his last 3 games, all 3 of those Raider victories. That's why they've gotten back into the playoff chase. Well, the Chargers are the worst team in the NFL, giving up successful runs this season. So there is a lot of strength versus weakness going on in this game. I think we're getting the better defense here, though, catching points, a full 3 points, maybe 3.5. Public on LA, maybe we get an extra hook if this game gets to Sunday and the handle continues to intensify on the Chargers. So I think we're getting the better defense. We're getting the more efficient offense running the ball, and we're getting that team at home as well, catching the full 3 points. I think the Raiders are certainly worth a flyer this week.
To further your point here, first off, no team in the NFL runs the ball more than it passes. And actually, the Raiders have the 4th highest pass rate in the NFL. However, in the last 3 weeks, that pass rate has dropped from 65% down to 52%. This looks like a team that is gearing up for the postseason by running the ball a lot more.
Well, that's what they say, right? It's the Bill Parcells approach to the NFL. It's a little old school, but in a era where there aren't a lot of teams that are prepared for that style because there are so many good passing offenses in the league, most defenses today struggle against the run just because they're so geared up for the pass. They're usually in nickel coverages and they don't have that extra man in the box. Well, the Raiders are not one of those teams. The Raiders are one of those teams that's tough. They're gritty. They're good in the trenches. Their defensive line's been playing great over the last few weeks, especially. And when you look at the Raiders on offense, they're getting Darren Waller back. We mentioned how good the running game is. And there's been some interesting numbers with Derek Carr that I'll throw at you here, Steve. Since Henry Ruggs' dismissal, which was in week 9. So that's basically the last half of the season, which is when we weight these numbers anyways when we're looking at the back half of the year. Derek Carr's been fantastic. 3rd in completion percentage, 9th in passing success rate. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFL, and Derek Carr's in the top 10 of 2 very important categories, despite losing his best deep threat and despite being without Darren Waller for a large chunk of that time. So you cannot speak any higher about what this Raiders team has been able to accomplish with all of the off-field issues. They're a mentally tough team. I think they'll make fewer mistakes in this game. We've seen the Chargers be inconsistent at times. They are the Chargers. Sure. I know Justin Herbert's kind of lifted the issues they've had in close games, in certain spots.
He's no Joe Burrow.
I still favor taking points here. No, certainly no Joe Burrow, right?
But that's the funny thing about Derek Carr, because when you think about the Raiders, you think of Josh Jacobs and being able to run the ball as much as they are, but Carr has actually been very effective. One of the other things that's been very effective this year is your ability to pick those 2-leg teasers. That 2-leg 6-point teaser focuses on 2 playoff-bound teams, and we start things off with the Cowboys, which their line against the Eagles is at 7. You're moving that line to Dallas -1 against a team that is ravaged with COVID-19. And the Bucs line is at 7.5. You're dropping that to Tampa -1.5 over the Panthers. What stood out to you about these particular games?
I'll start with Dallas because we're starting to hear some actual negative news come out of the Dallas camp this week. Micah Parsons, all-star, all-pro linebacker who's a shoo-in for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's even in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. He will not play in this game because of COVID-19. And also, Terrence Smith, the fantastic left tackle, also is on the list this week. So some difficulties for the Cowboys as well. And when you look at this game big picture, neither team really has anything serious to play for. There could be some seeding discrepancies if one team wins, and because if one team wins, the other team loses, and there might be some seeding changes that happen along the way. But the Eagles, even before they had 12 guys placed on the COVID list earlier this week, were already discussing resting players for this game because they have nothing to play for. I think Dallas, coming off of the loss against Arizona, has a little bit more to play for, because they want some motivation some momentum heading into the postseason, whereas the Eagles actually been playing very well down the stretch. So I think this is a slight motivation edge to Dallas. And if you get that line to a pick 'em now, you can actually move it through 0, which I wouldn't recommend doing. But the line has come down a little bit on Dallas. For Tampa Bay, they're dealing with a lot of off-the-field issues this week as well with Antonio Brown. But they're facing a Carolina offense that's arguably, maybe outside of the Giants, the worst offense in the NFL. And I think Tampa Bay, again, some false narratives going on because everyone's thinking they're not playing that well. They're not covering a lot of numbers, which is fair. In the betting space, they're not playing that well. But they're still a top 10 team across the board in all the categories we talk about. So they're a really good team. And again, they almost lost to the Jets last week. They did lose to the Saints 2 weeks ago and didn't score, trying to build some momentum heading to the playoffs. I think good veteran teams know how to turn that switch on. And I think Dallas, whose defense is fantastic, even without Micah Parsons, and the Bucs, whose offense is one of the most efficient in the leagues, will play better this week.
I think you really hit on a very key point here with the Carolina Panthers, because there are some teams that have given up on the season, and Carolina seems to be that team. You love that yards per play average, and you're right. Carolina is second worst to the Giants as far as offensive yards per play at 4.6, but their last 3 games, Carolina's yards per play has dropped to 3.7. That's a team that's waving the white flag right now. It doesn't matter who they're facing. You're going to fade the Panthers.
100%. And I feel the same way about the Giants, which, I know that's a separate discussion with some off the field issues plaguing them and Joe Judge and the drama that's going around with Carolina. I just don't think there's a whole lot of talent on the field right now, and I think that's an issue. The Giants are in that boat as well at quarterback. The Panthers dealing with the Sam Darnold, Cam Newton dilemma, and that has not been a positive situation either this year. So offensive, I would say those 2 teams right now, the Panthers and the Giants.
We're putting the inflection and the right syllable. We are at the end of the season, which means some guys are playing for contract incentives. And this gives us a really key moment where we can play those personal player props. Why do you think that these incentives make this the most actionable plays for you this week?
Can I steal a phrase from Jerry Maguire? Show me the money.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's as simple as that. At the end of the day, these are professional athletes. We view them as, entertainers or gladiators, but at the end of the day, they're doing this for a paycheck. And, they get a lot of extra cheddar cheese on their taco if they can
run through some of these that you like.
Yeah. So I think the most important one I would look to this week in terms of the biggest payout, Tyler Lockett is 2 touchdowns away from a $1.2 million payday. We have seen this before. Last year, Tyler Lockett was 2 touchdowns away from the same payday in week 17. Now, obviously, week 18. He got 2 touchdowns in the last game of the year. I think it was 8-1 was that prop paid out. It obviously paid Tyler Lockett a significantly more handsome sum of money, and it will do so again this year. So I'd look to the Tyler Lockett 2 touchdown prop, or just for him to score, because I do think he will be very aggressive with trying to get, or the Seahawks offense will be aggressive with trying to get him in the end zone. The other one I really like, Rob Gronkowski is 7 catches away from $500,000, which is a little bit above where his weekly prop usually is, which means you could bet it lower and hope that they try to get him there. And same thing for 95 yards away from $500,000. Again, that's slightly above where his average prop usually is in the 40s or the 50s. So you can play it at that lower number and hope that they try to get him to 95 yards. I'll mention another one. AJ Green is 75 yards away from $250,000. That's slightly, again, above where his usual prop number is, which is where I like it. I like the number that he needs to be higher than what the prop number is. Yeah. Because in some cases, like Stephon Diggs, who is 6 catches away from a $658,000 payday, usually his prop number's around 6.5, which means it would have to get 7 to hit. So that could be a bit of a trickier handicap. We have to wait till the prop numbers become available, usually Friday or Saturday. But these, Steve, are my most actionable plays of the season. I don't usually put full units on props very often, These are not only full units, some of them might be 2 units, depending on where those numbers come out.
I tell you what, if you didn't remind me about what happened last year with Tyler Lockett, I would have thought that was the longest stretch. But, you know, Pete Carroll is a player's coach. Russell Wilson wants to get the ball to Tyler Lockett. You know, all of those inside slants and those short routes that they run there in Seattle, I could see them, you know, getting Lockett a couple of like 5-yard touchdown passes. As for Gronk, though, it's $500,000. Tom Brady will tell him, I tell you what, I'm not going to end up giving you 95 yards, but I'll cover you on the $500,000 bonus here, buddy. You know.
Well, what's the party going to be like at Gronk's place if he gets both 7 catches and 95 yards on Sunday? $1 million payday. I mean, that's going to be some hell of a party,
That's
right,
true.
Steve?
They can throw the Lombardi Trophy around in the backyard. Just don't drop it. All right, that is his best plays of the week and teasers and props. Make sure you check out our other segment focusing on the Jets and the Giants. For Jared Smith and Pickswise, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.